Good audience. Good audience.
They have
Thank
good
you. Great audience.
Welcome, finally, to Robert Duvall. We are so happy you're here. First
Good to be here. Oh, make sure it works. All right. Good.
Strong. A couple of questions first about Get Low. We know that it's based on a true story. Felix Bush was about 74 years old when this story happened. He lived for another 5 years, as a matter of fact, in Tennessee. Yeah. And I'm curious, what was it about this particular story, this screenplay, that grabbed you and made you feel you wanted to be this guy?
Well, initially what grabbed me was anybody that would set up and go to his own funeral. That's a good premise for a movie, and it grabbed me right away. But it took them like 7 years to get it off the ground. Dean Zanuck was terrific, and Aaron Schneider, they pursued it. And then, not that I kind of lost interest because there was no money and the writing got a little off. And I would see Dean and his father in the Palm restaurant in L.A. I said, how you doing? Oh, that's that guy, Dean. And I'd forget about it. And then finally they brought Charlie Mitchell on from Alabama. They came to my farm in Virginia, and I wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for Charlie, a brilliant Southern writer from Alabama that helped the infrastructure and the frills and the character development and everything, and to make it a true Southern tale, because he's a great writer. He changed the whole thing.
Now, to make it, forgive me for using these words, a true Southern tale, I guess some fictional elements were added, right, to
Totally.
The real story?
We fictionalized the whole thing. I mean, this was really a guy named Felix Bush, but we did fictionalize it, definitely, yeah.
And, for example, Frank Quinn, the rather delightfully amoral funeral guy.
Immoral?
Was amoral a little bit.
Amoral?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he's got kind of interesting ethics that finally turn out to be good. Was he part of the real story, or is he invented?
No, he was, I think he was invented, I think, yeah. We didn't really delve into the actual thing because, it really was a fictional tale, really.
Okay. Now, I gather also that for the funeral sequence at the end, the actors really went on radio in Georgia where this was shot and asked for extras to show up.
We
and
did
these
that.
were all local people who came?
Yeah, we did that, yeah.
What was it like for you? Because, obviously you were working primarily with actors in this film,
Right.
but here you had all these real people. What kind of effect did that have?
It's better to have real people. They're not sitting in Hollywood with the trade magazines waiting for their cues. There's a openness and a naivete that serves the project, and at least for 2 days, maybe if they'd done it for 2 weeks, they'd have gotten jaded, but for 2 to 3 days that they came, they were wonderful. They came in at 4 or 5 in the morning and stayed at 8 at night, dressed themselves, and totally immersed themselves in the imaginary situation. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it has a wonderful feel, that whole sequence at the end. Also, you deliver what I'm sure on paper is kind of intimidating because it's a pretty long speech, the whole confession, the story. Right. I sometimes when I look at screenplays, I think an actor will go bonkers if it's 2 to 3 pages of dialogue. How do you approach something like that? Do you do kind of all in one take? Is it done
One
in
take.
segments?
We did it
was
in
all
one
one
take.
take. And
Which is unusual, but that's the way it worked. You mean, how do I go after it?
Well, given that it's probably pretty difficult in normal filmmaking as opposed to theater,
Right.
to keep the emotion going through a long monologue. Does one have to do it in one take in order to keep it, or are you able to do it, piecemeal, but you've just answered?
Well, usually there's the kind of scene that, first of all, when I studied, I just read it over and over. One of my main ways of working is daydreaming in the middle of the night. You wake up and you daydream it in the night, and it was such good writing, I just let it take me along. I personalized it in a very relaxed way. And what was the question again?
No, you have absolutely answered it. How does one approach, especially a very long speech like that?
Well, it was interesting because it became so personal to me in a very relaxed way that we did it. And when the movie was over, usually when a movie's over, it's over. But it was like a stage play in that I would wake up or during the course of a day say those lines to myself for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Wow. So it was like a stage play in that the speech and that part of the portion of the script stuck with me. And it was so much a part of me. But yet we did only do it in one take. Usually, in filmmaking, a scene like that, they'll beat it to death. You'll do it from this angle, all day long, and then they'll reverse it and go on the other person, and you're exhausted by the end of the day. The day we did it on me, they put up 3 cameras. We did it in one take. It worked. Then we turned the camera around on Sissy Spacek, as it really is. Spacek, and she did it in one take, and we were through for the day. We weren't like exhausted like you usually. I was in one movie. I think it was called the Gone in 60 Seconds movie.
Oh yeah.
It was Gone in 6 seconds, that movie. But anyway, like.
I didn't include a clip
what
from
happened
that.
was, between takes sometimes it would be 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, I mean, you can only invent so many games between takes. But like when you have 24 days to shoot, sometimes that compressed time of working fast and in a short period of time is better than if you have a longer shoot.
Well, that's one of the great things about independent filmmaking. Last night I got to attend the Gotham Awards, where the great tribute was to Robert Duvall, and everybody was talking about...
Yeah, but no greater than tonight.
Probably about as many people in attendance,
Yeah.
too. But, the independent New York film world was claiming you as one of our own, so to speak, because this, for example, is a wonderful example of independent, low-budget filmmaking.
Right.
And indeed, maybe it is that the limitations define the possibilities. When a Hollywood production can allow for 50 takes, you do 50 takes.
Yeah.
If the budget allows for 1 or 2, you got to do it, and you do it better.
Well, you probably will disagree with me, but I think, even though he was a great director in a way, I think Stanley Kubrick was an actor's enemy. 70 takes. To do what? To do this? 70 times? I mean, I guess he was a wonderful filmmaker, but if you see some of his films, you'll see some of the worst performances in the history of films, in his movies. And when Brando had to do 70 takes in Burn, I said, why would you let yourself be subject to that? Why would you do 70 takes? After 2, 3, or 4, or 5 takes, that's enough. After that, I think it's insecurity on the part of a director. How does he know if 1 is better than 68 or whatever,
Yeah.
So,
I'm not about to defend the multiple take directors.
Please
Kubrick,
don't.
But actually just as guilty. I mean, in terms of the great directors in history of cinema, we know that William Wyler, who made The Best Years of Our Lives, he did as many as 40 or 50 takes. Warren Beatty, notorious for the number of takes on Reds. I mean, sometimes...
what else is he notorious for?
That's not going to be my focus tonight. I'll come back to you.
And sometimes you can shoot the rehearsal without anybody knowing it. Say, let's rehearse this one, and then they go like this, roll the camera without telling the actor. Why not? And maybe you'll get something very unexpected when there's no onus on the actor, really.
Do you like to have a lot of rehearsal before shooting, or do you prefer to go just...
Well, it depends on the director. I mean, take 1 as a rehearsal, then you can take 2, take 3, whatever, I mean, sometimes, but not so much. Not so much.
And of course, you have been a director yourself as well. We showed a clip from The Apostle and from Assassination Tango. When you direct, do you tend to also try to get that immediacy and have very few takes? Is it the same as what you want from others?
Then I become a little bit a victim of what I'm against. Not that I go with it, but I become a little more cautious and do a few more takes because I'm not quite sure, You go back to the thing and look at that monitor and everything like that. But, I like to direct. I would like to do more, but it's very difficult to do, to get a project off the ground, raise the money, this and that. And I've dispensed with a full-length mirror where I can yell at the director anytime I want to, right? So I don't do that.
Okay. Now, with Get Low, I'm tempted to ask what kind of research you did for it, but I have a feeling that when you read the script, you immediately felt a kinship with Felix based on having played characters written by the great Horton Foote, for example.
Right.
I mean, way back from the tiny part in To Kill a Mockingbird, Boo Radley, through Tender Mercies. I mean, do you feel a kind of connection between this character and some of the ones you've incarnated before?
With Horton?
Yeah, Horton,
Absolutely.
or even some of the others.
I wanted him to live to see this movie because it reminded me of his work very much. And he didn't leave, but I think I've told this story before, that the first day that I gave the speech to the audience for them. That was before we did the actual scene on me and Sissy. The mule comes on with the coffin that I've built for myself for when I really die. And the scene was going on, and Luciana, my wife, was off camera, and she got a phone call at that moment that Horton Foote had just died. So it was like so eerie, but full circle from To Kill a Mockingbird. It was like he was there. And you know, I was very moved when I found that out, because we were good. I mean, how many friends do you have for 50 years and still stay friends? You know, he was a great guy, wonderful writer,
and gave
special
you
man.
one of your greatest performances or
Yeah.
chances to play an amazing character in Tender Mercies.
I always said if it was only Horton Foote and Francis Coppola and I didn't do anything else, I'd have had a wonderful mini career with those two people, you know. And Ulu Grossbart on stage, yeah.
Well, yeah, and Ulu Grossbart, who also directed you in a film that I wished we had included a clip from, True Confessions.
True Confessions, right.
Very, very interesting with you and
Yeah.
De Niro, and we haven't even gotten a chance to go there.
I saw Ulu today. I hadn't seen him. We talked for 3 hours. It was great. I hadn't seen him in a while.
Yeah. And he, by the way, also, he had done Hollywood films, but among his recent work is Georgia with Jennifer Jason Leigh, which was a kind of scrappier film about an idiosyncratic woman who wants to be a singer but doesn't have the voice for it.
Right.
In a film like Get Low, what grabs me, I think, especially on a second viewing, is the beautiful...
What happened on the first viewing? I don't know.
Well, it's a good question, but usually during a first viewing, I kind of just let the film wash over me, you know.
Right.
And then the second time, I'm kind of more aware of what it was that I loved the first time, but I couldn't really put my finger on it because I wasn't being analytical the first time.
Right.
But this time, I was able to see more clearly this beautiful simplicity or restraint in the way you play this character.
Right.
Because I can imagine a lot of lesser actors getting kind of showy, you know, getting kind of externalized. And I'm just wondering a little about how you do this. I also remember your beautiful restraint way back with a movie like Rambling Rose.
Right.
The scenes with you and Laura Dern in 1991, magnificent movie. Do you, right away when you start to, let's say, do the first take or the rehearsal, are you at that level? Or do you sometimes start in a more visible way and pull back?
I start from like zero.
Okay.
And am willing to get to zero. And let the result let the process take you to the result rather than going directly to the result. And you just feel what it could be, you know. But like when I did American Buffalo, when I did Lonesome Dove, those characters were much more out there.
Yeah.
But still got to be you doing it, being out there, so to speak. So, but I do get a few muted parts. I mean, not muted, but like just a guy talking and listening, you know. That's the way he was.
And there have been others recently. I mean, you played a kind of taciturn, eccentric alongside Michael Caine as your brother in Secondhand Liars.
Right, yeah.
Again, in Texas.
He was great to work with, Michael. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he sat in that chair a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, before each take, we do with the way English, turn over, mark it, you know, instead of action, you know, and roll. He was great to work with. He was.
You know,
on the other movie in Austin, he'd go home to London on the weekend to go shop and come back to Texas Monday morning. He loves to shop, that guy.
Yeah. Just now when you did a pretty spot-on imitation, I realized the only time that I think I've ever heard you act with a British accent was the 7% Solution, when you played Dr. Watson to Nicole Williamson's
Right. Where
Sherlock
is Nicole
Holmes.
Williamson these days? Who knows? Scottish guy, yeah.
I think he had a slightly dubious experience doing Hamlet on the New York stage approximately, 8 years ago, and there was some kind of altercation with, I just blanked on his name, Evan Handler. Thank you.
Another actor?
Evan Handler.
Another actor,
Yeah,
yes.
he got a little energetic with his sword, Nicole Williamson did. And that was the last I actually heard of him doing something on the New York stage anyway.
Try that with Sean Connery. Right. Yeah. Anyway.
But you rarely play Brits, but that experience was a good one for you, the 7% Solution?
Yeah, it was. It was hard work, but it was good. I've gone to other countries, and you kind of offer yourself up as a sacrificial lamb, really, when you play an Englishman, or when I played a Scottish soccer coach, you know, I studied that accent for like 10 months. Very difficult, the Scottish accent. But, you know, I like certain challenges. Like, I went to Moscow to play Stalin, you know, with when the government was turning around in the 91. That was another interesting challenge. But, you know, when I did 7% Solution, I worked on that. And I tried the accent and everything, you know. I mean, you know, it was an interesting part.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Unfortunately, that's one of the films not available on DVD. Don't even try with Netflix. I've tried to get it to include it, and we.
Yeah, and I love
not.
working with Alan Arkin was in it. I love working with Alan Arkin. He's a terrific guy.
Yeah.
Wonderful actor. Yeah.
It seems to me when I look over your filmography, which I've had a lot of fun doing over the past few days, you like characters, not say a taciturn eccentric or somebody explosive, but the contradictions. I'm thinking already back to The Godfather, where you're Tom Hayden. He's a smooth lawyer, but he's also got the New York scrappy, you know, accent and smarts.
A little bit, yeah.
And then I was thinking about a film that I think probably very few people here have seen, A Handmaid's Tale. Ooh. I loved this movie. It was directed by... I did. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Well, you play a really interesting...
Maybe it was okay.
I'll confess that I never read the Margaret Atwood novel on which it was based. And people later told me that I might have loved the film less had I read the novel. Right. But it was you, Natasha Richardson, Faye Dunaway. Yeah. And I remember, and by the way, it's a fascinating story, a very sort of dystopian vision. And you play the commander, right. A guy who, you know, is kind of the head of security, you know. Right. But in your scenes that have a sexual thing, you're like, you know, a guy who's turned on by decadence. I mean, there's a real kind of sense of contradiction in that character.
I think you always have to look for contradictions. And no matter if I was playing Stalin or even Eichmann I played, you have to try to find maybe some form of vulnerability to show that there is a human side. And, you know, each character you have to try to find the contradictions. You just can't play one thing.
Well, actually, I think one of the best examples of that might be the film you directed and starred in, Assassination Tango.
Right.
Because I don't know how many of you have seen it, but you play a Brooklyn hitman who goes to Buenos Aires, but once in Buenos Aires, drawn into this world of not only tango, but of a beautiful young woman. Right. We showed a few minutes of the scene in the cafe where you and Luciana Pedraza, and by the way, after that, they became Mr. and Mrs. Duvall. I guess that scene worked. And she is actually here with us tonight, I should mention, sitting right over there.
Right. But he was a dancer, a social dancer before he went down, swing dance. And if the boat had gone the other way, the Italian population would have ended up in Buenos Aires like a lot did, you know.
That's right.
And like Frankie Gio, the real Frankie Gio from New York, he was a bouncer at Roseland. That's why I gave him the party. He's a good swing dancer. And he always said, in the 50s, the Italians could jitterbug and the Jews could mambo. He said, that's true. You know, Frankie. So I put him in the movie. He was very natural.
Now, speaking of natural, can you tell us a little about that scene? Because what I loved the first time I saw it and afterwards was the sense of how improvised it was. Your character's kind of childlike with this very strong woman.
Well, you mean the scene in the coffee shop?
Yeah.
Others as well. Where we would kind of, you know, rehearse on street corners, here, there, coffee shops. New York and also in Argentina. And so we got a sense of back and forth to get Luciana away from just a script in English, because she speaks English well, but to keep it more on her terms. And we gave her, her 2-year-old niece became her 2-year-old daughter, which was a kind of an emotional cementing process for her. And in that particular scene, we talked about certain things, but we set up 2 cameras, and we let 8 minutes run on 2 times, full magazines. And the cinematographer in Argentina, he didn't know what was going on, what we were doing, but we just let it roll. And when it was over, we had some gold, some wonderful things, you know. And like she stole the show anyway, but you know, actors have stopped her on the street and said, "My acting teacher told us to go see your performance to Luciana." So she really did a wonderful job. She hadn't acted before, but I knew she's such a natural actress in life with that certain kind of middle class, I call it street mentality in Buenos Aires, that I knew she didn't have to go to Lee Strasberg to be in my movie. So
Understood. But also you, not perhaps unlike another actor turned director who I admire deeply, John Cassavetes,
yes,
you knew that the way to make the scene breathe and live was to just put the cameras there and let the actors find their reality,
Exactly.
their moments.
exactly.
you
And
know.
also, sometimes a non-actor or a first-time actor like Luciana can put the professional actor on notice. Once they step across the line and say, "I want to be in a movie," it could be very kind of a authentic thing, because I did it in The Apostle, I did it in the Tango movie, the Gypsy movie. You know, it's a reality check, and they keep the professional actor on notice, and so you can mix them. Because in a tango club in Argentina, who knows how to sit there with a drink and a cigarette other than a tango dancer? And much better than an actor will do. So, you know, those who wanted to be actors being tango dancers, they made that transformation very, very easily. And so it was a joy to work with both, the non-actors and the actors, and making that meld, so to speak.
Yeah. Now, I know that Luciana is a brilliant tango dancer. Are you still doing some tangos?
Socially, yeah. That's about it. No, it's a social dance, like the two-step is in Texas, like the swing dances in New York, like like shag is in North Carolina. So it's a social dance, counterclockwise in a club, other than just what you see people doing on the stage, the fancy stuff. So we do. Yeah. It's a nice thing to do as a hobby.
Well, I happen to be a fanatic of tango. I listen to tango music all the time, and I even took some tango lessons.
Yeah.
But I'm not as good as Luciana, and even as you. We showed a clip from the great Santini, as well as Apocalypse Now, and you've often played these military characters very powerfully. I'm curious whether some of this is informed by the fact that your own father was an admiral, was in the military. Has that been something you used?
Yes and no. I mean, I was around the military, and I went in the Army for 2 years, and I was always around special service officers, and I was always observing them, because I didn't particularly like the Army, but I served my time, and I would always watch the officers and the non-commissioned officers, so that when I played, in Apocalypse Now, there's certain, I remember down at Fort Benning and Fort Bragg down there, certain, military officers, infantry officers, the way they stood, the way they talked. So it served me by being in the military and being around it, And when I did the great Santini, I was down in. I remember I went to look for a house and to rent, and I went in. I was pretty good shape. I had my hair cut. I don't have much hair anyway, but I had it cut. And I went into the real estate woman, and she went in the back room and said, "There's a man looking for a house." I said, "Who is it?" She said, "I don't know, some Marine out there." So that was good. So I eventually got a house. But I remember in finding the house, I'll never forget this. There was a beautiful house on the corner by a bayou. And I said, "Boy, that would be a great house to rent." So I went up, I knocked on a door, kind of nervy of me, and this sweet little southern lady came to the door. "Yes," I said, "there's a beautiful house you had." I said, "Did you ever think about maybe renting it out? Maybe I'd like to rent your house." And she said, "But where would I go?" So that was that. It was so nice.
But I did hear you say last night that your favorite work of your own is Lonesome Dove.
The part, yeah.
And I wanted to just maybe turn this into more of a question, because you've done a lot of Westerns, including my favorite, The Great Northfield, Minnesota Raid that Philip Kaufman directed. You've done things like Open Range, True Grit, small part indeed, Joe Kidd.
And one of my favorites was the ones with the 5 Chinese girls.
Which one was that?
Broken Trail.
Oh, Broken Trail. I'm sorry, of course, the TV one.
Right up there with Lonesome Dove. I liked it a lot.
Right. Now, do you have a sort of preference for Westerns, partly because you yourself feel very comfortable in that landscape? Is it that you grew up watching Western films? Is some of that
Well,
part
yeah,
of it?
somewhat. But, when I went to Hollywood, a young actor said to me, "What do you do between jobs when you were young, to keep from going nuts?" I said, "Hobbies, and more hobbies. It keeps you off of dope." I said, "So have hobbies, So I went to these rent strings in the valley out there in L.A., and I would rent a horse for $4 an hour, like 4 or 5 days a week, bareback, Western saddle, English saddle. I learned to jump horses, did shows later, so I would have a good seat on a horse in a Western. And I had spent 2 summers at the end of World War II on my uncle's ranch in northern Montana. had a 40,000-acre cattle and sheep ranch that we went there as kids, and they had a wonderful Scotch cowboy who we kind of idolized, and I learned a lot from and gained my first sense of wisdom about doing the westerns in the future, And Jimmy Morrison was his name. He was a great natural cowboy. I saw him ride up and touch an antelope on a horn. I saw him rope a baby coyote. There weren't enough women to go around, so he would get drunk and profess love for my aunt. And my uncle would say, "Now, Jimmy, back off. Now, back off." Because there are not a lot of women up there in those days in the West. So, it was interesting. I learned a lot on that ranch to give me a certain sense of what to do maybe. And my first Western I got was Route 66. I hadn't ridden in a few years. I'd take the subway up to the Bronx and take these irascible horses out. Lucky I wasn't killed on them, for like $4 or $5 an hour. And just to begin to get back into it, And I like what. So I remember that was the first Western I did, Route 66. I got on my horse, the first scene. I come up to the thing, pa-yum, and something took over me like I was a kid. I pulled out my gun, I went, and even the horse looked at me. It was so weird. What an idiot I was. But from then on, after that's when I really got into horses. And it's a wonderful thing to do. They're not machines. They don't love you like a dog does. You have to be very careful. Before I did open range, I broke 6 ribs on a horse. If I'd have broken them 1 week later, I couldn't have done that movie. I mended and went up there and did it. But they're not machines, so you have to be careful. You really do.
But that, I think for me helps to understand this fantastic physicality, the ease that you have, especially in the Western films. Your body seems to inhabit that landscape in a way that, for me, some of the Eastern actors wouldn't be believable doing.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of an Eastern Western actor, both. New York, I lived a lot of times in New York, and when I did Lonesome Dove, I said the English have Shakespeare, the French Molière, the Russians have Chekhov, and the Argentines have Borges. We have the Western. That's ours, And when I finished Lonesome Dove, I said to myself, I can retire now because I think I've done something. I fulfilled what myself that I feel good about. Yeah. That I've done something that's. But, I didn't. That's 20 years ago. I'm still going.
Sure. But even further back, 72 was the great Northfield, Minnesota raid. Yeah. And partly because we showed a clip from that as well as from The Apostle, I couldn't help but feel that this psychopathic Jesse James, because Philip Kaufman obviously wanted to do a revisionist Western that undermined the heroic Jesse James that we've seen in movies, whether it's Tyrone Power, Henry Fonda, whatever. And you played him with a kind of evangelical.
Well, his father was a preacher, and I was getting into that whole evangelical thing that I eventually had, and I wanted to incorporate that,
Yeah, because it almost feels like you were preparing the Apostle in Great Northfield, Minnesota raid.
Yeah. I forget what but I remember that Northfield, come on, Northfield.
Give me an amen, which you then hear in the Apostle as well.
And I like what Brad Pitt did in the last one, but what he could have done more, what he did in the movie California. Put it in that, I thought, because Jesse James was a bit of a wacko. Jesse James. He really was.
Yeah, but most filmmakers have not, bought into that. They do the traditional mythology of the Western hero, but Kaufman wanted to do something against the religious fervor that turned him into a violent psychopath.
Right.
And you did that amazingly well, I got to say.
Well, Phil Kaufman's wonderful to work with, That was one of his first or second movies, really.
It was actually his first major Hollywood film after doing these experimental movies like Fearless Frank with a then unknown
He's
John
a good
Voight.
guy because when Jesse James and his gang first came riding into town, it was like the first day of shooting. It was like Bruce Ortiz was the cameraman. They had the camera going. And here we rode into town with the rain and our dusters and everything. And Phil was literally on the ground hugging the cinematographer's leg. He was so excited that he was getting the scene. He was just beside himself. It was great to work with, Phil.
I have one question, because my students actually came up with a question when they were watching Great Northfield, Minnesota raid at Columbia. It's the first time we've ever seen a Jesse James on screen that we thought might be gay. In other words, that might have a slight kind of, the way that...
Who, Brad Pitt or me? Gay?
Well, there was this, the Jesse in Great Northfield, I I gotta ask. I mean, this is
He must have come out of the Juilliard School of Acting, that guy.
No, in Northfield, your character doesn't want to go near women, kind of has a strange bath scene with the guys. I don't know whether this was something that was conscious or not, and maybe I should just shut up.
I think it was maybe in the writing, not in my interpretation.
We'll let it go
then.
Also, as long as we're talking about working with directors, I mentioned earlier that some of your obviously great collaborations have been with Coppola, and you yourself just said so. Your work with him includes other films, The Conversation, a small part, The Rain People, but obviously The Godfather, Godfather 2, and Apocalypse Now are now the really iconic parts of American film history. Right. When we look back on, the 1970s, it's impossible not to think of these films and your work in them. Could you talk a little about working with Coppola, especially, I guess, for me, Apocalypse Now is the most interesting. To what extent were you able to improvise a bit and shape the character in your own direction? To what extent did you work constantly under
somewhat. I mean, the writing is so good. I think Coppola is not like some of the old directors who were thinking the thing was up. I mean, I remember when I did True Grit, the director said to Glenn Campbell, when I say action now, tense up, goddammit. Now, you don't say that to an actor. You couldn't say that to Joe Montana in the Super Bowl. I mean, in this day and age, I think the directors they want to turn it around and see what you do. And Coppola is one of the first of those big-time directors that would do that. He'd turn around and let it see what you would come up with, and then if you need to talk about it, you talk about it. And, he was great to work with. The thing about Coppola, I would like to write a book someday called The Rushes Are Great, because every director thinks the rushes are great, and the movies are never great as the rushes. Coppola would come out of the rushes with a long face. He was never satisfied, so he was always searching and always, going after something out there, and that he didn't know what it was, but he was out to get it. So he trusts his actors, but we fooled around a lot on The Godfather, a lot of jokes, a lot of mooning, a lot of this, a lot of that. And Coppola said, "Come on, guys, come on, we have to be serious." And we working with Jimmy Caan. It was great. I mean, one time, like Brando said, "Could I have a moment, please?" And so he goes like this or this, and does a wonderful emotional scene. He needed a little preparation. About a week later, Jimmy, with his shoulder, said, "Francis, could Bobby have a moment?" And I go like this. Said, "Action." I just walk across the stage. I got a dirty look from Brando, but a lot of fun. A lot of fun on his sets. A lot of And I think he said, "Come, we got to be serious." But I think he really enjoyed it. So he liked the whole process of the filmmaking, Coppola.
Yeah.
Jokes, this, that,
food,
a little being not organized, but making it all work. I mean, it was an interesting set to work with him, always that way.
And working with Brando, I mean, obviously we just have to ask a question about that, because he is, possibly the most extraordinary actor, I guess, for me, of that era, certainly. Yes. And you worked with him quite a bit in both films. Was that experience one of the more sort of significant or defining aspects of your own work as an actor?
Well, I think, we looked at Brando as like the godfather of actors. Gene Hackman and Dustin Hoffman and I used to meet at Cromwell's drugstore every day. I don't know if it's still there or not. Yeah. And we would be there, 4 or 5 times a week. And if we would mention Brando's name once, we'd mention it 25 times in one day, because he was kind of the guy, Yeah. He was kind of the godfather of actors of that time. So we kind of all looked up to him. And when I did The Chase, the first movie, I remember one time he's sitting over here, talking. Now he gets cut, goes back to... There was no beginning. It was all the same. Coffee, acting, action, cut, coffee again. So there was no beginning. I learned a good lesson from him in that now action, we have to start. It's just... And that's when I did my Gypsy movie. I rarely use the word action. I say, "Angelo, come on in," so don't give a sense of a beginning. It's just an extension of what is now into the filming
Yeah,
process.
the process. I think Arthur Penn learned a hell of a lesson on that too. The chase was, he was trying to direct the chase, and I think
Yeah.
he was early in his career, and he hadn't
Right.
yet been able to tame Brando
Yeah.
and get it all together. The same thing happened when they did Missouri Breaks years later, I think.
Right.
Not easy. With Brando, was there something that you, how do I put this, besides what you just described, in working on The Godfather, something that you learned that you then were able to incorporate into your acting afterwards? Anything?
Yeah, just what I mentioned before
Just that.
about that, like trying not to get anywhere. Just let it take you from zero to whatever, and and if it means something to you, it'll be emotional, but you don't have to necessarily go for the emotion necessarily,
Okay.
But it was great working with him and with Jimmy. It was a great experience working. I remember when we finished. We had the opening night party at the St. Regis Hotel. It's a great party. It was a victorious party. And we were all standing around, and a well-known director came up with a cigar and said to us actors, "You boys, you were wonderful in this movie." He said, "I don't know about the movie," he said. Now, I'm not gonna mention names, but in 6 lifetimes, this director, who's still living, couldn't make a movie like The Godfather, Can you imagine?
Okay.
So nothing is absolute. Nothing's like 2 and 2 is 4, 4 and 4 is 8. It's still subjective. It's still up for opinions.
Okay.
So
Now, apart from Brando, with whom you acted, I was curious if there was some other inspirations in terms of your own acting. I mean, I remember back in 1981, around that time, Vincent Canby called you the American Olivier in the New York Times. And then there was, I found in my old stuff, in my mother's apartment actually, American Film Magazine, September 1981 issue, cover story was you. And the actual title was America's Hard-Boiled Olivier. Was Olivier of any import to you, or maybe, I don't know, Spencer
to a point,
Tracy?
I guess.
Or
Yeah,
some of
I
these
mean,
guys?
yeah, he was the other person considered for The Godfather other than Brando.
Who, Olivier?
Olivier. But, I don't think it would have been the right casting compared to what Brando could do. He was a different kind of actor, but very skillful, more of what I call a tap dancing actor. He was very facile in a lot of ways. So I worked with him just to see what it was like to be around him. I wanted to be around him. And I remember
The
he
Betsy
was
was this?
working on his American accent. And this guy was helping him, and they say, turn over, and he says, "Here we are at Hardeman Manor in Lake Michigan, Hardeman. Oh, sorry, love, what's my line? Oh, thank you very much. Hardeman Manor." And he'd go back into it, And he was interesting. And when I did, no, he was in the 7% Solution, I think. He came. When I did in English, he said, your English accent's very good today, so maybe it wasn't so good yesterday, But it was interesting to see him work, yeah. It was different, a little bit more from the outside, but very skillful, very skillful.
And someone like Spencer Tracy or other American actors that you
Spencer
admired?
Tracy was wonderful. He was wonderful in Bad Dad, Black Rock.
Yeah.
He was very natural, except the Communist Daily newspaper in Havana, Cuba, that critic gave him a horrible, horrible review when he played the old man in the sea.
Ernest Hemingway.
This was like a Anglo-Saxon guy with a wide girth trying to play a Latin, so maybe that wasn't so good. I don't know. I think Anthony Quinn was more right for it when he did the television version. But forget critics. Forget those guys.
You don't read reviews,
no,
right?
I don't. I
No,
don't.
okay.
Spencer Tracy was a wonderful natural actor. I had a conversation with Alan Arkin about that one time, and now I can't think of the great actor way back in that day and age who did a lot of makeup and a lot of accents. He was he was in the Yiddish theater too. I forget his name right. Paul Muni.
Oh, Paul Muni.
And we came to the conclusion that Spencer Tracy was a much better actor than Paul Muni. Even though Paul Muni did all these accents and everything, he never was totally always in touch with himself. Like more actors are today, really.
Yeah.
A lot of the young actors are very good today. A lot of good black actors, Latin actors. Worldwide, the young actors, I think, are really more into a sense of truth than way back. I really think that.
You've had the opportunity to work with a lot of them. I remember beautiful work with Sean Penn in
Yes,
Colors,
Colors, yeah,
for
I-
example. And you've worked with Tom Cruise in Days of
Yeah.
Thunder, with John Travolta
Right.
in Phenomenon, among others. I mean, in terms of the younger actors, are there particular ones that you feel are carrying on this kind of legacy that you're part of?
Oh, yeah, there are a lot of good actors, wonderful actors around. Like we mentioned, Christian Bale in The Fighters, wonderful, just brilliant. And no, there are a lot of really
Yeah.
good young actors and now, Ricardo Darín of Argentina, Javier Bardem in Spain. I mean, they're all over the world, the good young actors. And filmmakers. When I direct films, my own personal films, I kind of go after the way the Iranian filmmakers do, part documentary and fiction mixed, which is a way to do that by using the real people. And like I mentioned last night, if people want to see a beautiful, beautiful independent film, it's called The Apple, directed by a 17-year-old Iranian girl.
Samira
Beautiful.
Makhmalbaf.
Yeah.
This was like 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, and
I
she's
saw
old.
it in Cannes.
And we were supposed to meet, a bunch of us from America and Iran, in the last minute the Iranian government canceled it. So when we took Get Low to the San Sebastian Film Festival, we had these different interviews from room to room. They run you all day long. So they put me in and said, this is an Iranian person. So this young woman sitting there, I said, I saw the greatest film, The Apple. She said, that was my film. I said, wait a minute, where's my wife? She probably thought I was trying to sway the jury. She was on the jury. But boy, I gave her, she must have thought I was nuts or something. I said, you're great. And she did her 4th film by then.
Yeah.
But she was 17 when she did The Apple.
That's right.
Beautiful film.
And by the way, she not only directed it and she co-wrote it, though it's a
You
sort
saw
of half.
it, right?
I saw it.
I love it.
She also
I love it.
edited it. I mean, it's an amazing feat. But her father is Mohsen Makhmalbaf, who's the great Iranian director. So, I mean, she obviously came from fantastic
He
training.
made that
but-
movie about the rug.
Yes.
And
Gabe.
he was the one that said in Hollywood they make manufactured movies and manufactured rugs. In Iran they make handmade movies and handmade rugs. So interesting kind of deduction.
He also made a film that completely blew me away about 7, 8 years ago called Kandahar, which I recommend very highly. But what you're pointing to is something I think terribly important. It's no longer that we can talk about American cinema, foreign cinema, or Hollywood independent. I mean, these days, the kind of work that you do, such as Get Low, and the best of Iranian cinema, there's a kind of, symbiotic relationship in a way, because one takes from each culture that which one can readapt into your own storytelling. And it's precisely what you do in The Apostle, as well as Angelo, My Love, when you take non-professional actors or non-actors, and you put them in the same room with actors or just with yourself, there's a kind of combustion that takes place. I mean, something that's unexpected, that's not scripted necessarily, but has its own reality that just takes over.
Absolutely.
And I presume that's one of the reasons you direct. I mean, to do
something
that.
I developed. I've been offered certain movies from California. I guess I could do them, but it has to be something I developed from the ground up, I'd love to do something on the border now. I mean, we had a nice script, but it's hard to get. I got to know all these sheriffs on the Texas border. There's 12 of them. Interesting guys. I mean, they really and their grandparents came from Mexico, but they want to enforce the border, keep the illegals out, and they're really amazing guys. And I'd still like to do maybe a small film around this one guy, Arvin West, who you've probably seen on TV. He really is a very interesting guy. He'll get in a fist fight, and he'd come in with a black guy. He said, I got in a fight with a county commissioner. Don't worry, it's my brother, he said. So, I mean, but he really takes care of his people. He really takes care. I mean, he threatened to throw 2 FBI guys in jail if they didn't get out of his jurisdiction. But he takes care of his people.
And this is something
I would like to do
direct,
maybe with him, or something about the border should be, even if it's modest, and it's because it's really interesting, that whole almost limbo state down there between the two countries.
And you seem to be, I think, especially interested in sort of subcultures, cultures other than mainstream America,
There's
whether
so
it's
many.
gypsy or evangelical or whatever. Oh, I know, we have to take a few questions from the audience while we have the chance. We're going to raise the lights slightly. Raise your hand high so that I can see you. If anyone has to leave, babysitters and parked cars, do so quickly and quietly. the gentleman here, there's a woman there, one woman here, and a hand here, and then I'll move my way to the back in the balcony. I'll repeat the questions, but please, if you're leaving, do it very quietly. Yes?
Mr. Duvall, I've liked all the heart and foot dramas that you've done, especially tomorrow. When you worked with Mr. Foote, did he give you any special insight into the characters that you didn't get from any other person?
The question is, the Horton Foote films that you've made, apart from Tomorrow, for example, were there any particular insights that Horton Foote gave you into your characters apart from what was in the script itself? Or from the director?
Well, yeah, I mean, when you work with Horton, he was an actor at one time. So I remember when we did the movie Convicts. You know the movie Convicts? A lot of people haven't seen that.
That's a long time ago.
And he would sit under the camera, write, action, cut, go back to writing, and I'd say, Horton, you mind if I try something, maybe a little improv? Oh, no, go ahead, Bobby, go ahead. Action, cut, back to writing. So he's very supportive of the actor, and, you know, he'll talk about the character, but he really trusts the actor and trusts your instincts. When we did the movie Tomorrow, we had done it as a stage play in Herbert Berghoff's studio downtown for 25 performances before we did a movie of it. And he's just very supportive of actors and really trusts them and looks to them with great respect. And you know, and whatever he gives you, if you ask him, it's a very supportive answer when he comes back as to what you might want to try in a certain given scene.
Yes.
You were so good in Godfather 1 and Godfather 2. Why weren't you in Godfather?
You were so good in Godfather 1, Godfather 2. Why weren't you in Godfather 3? Okay.
I saw Coppola. He denies the story, but it's true. He drove his car. He had a rent, not a limo, but a town car into my farm in Virginia. Came into my kitchen. I said, "Sit down there. I'm going to cook you the recipe you've always wanted. My mother's Maryland crab cake recipe." And so I wrote out the recipe for him, gave it to him, and we talked about Godfather 3 a little bit. And then he left. He forgot the recipe. He called up. He was more concerned about that recipe than would I be in Godfather 3. So it was, it didn't work out, you know. It didn't work out. And I don't think the movie was as good as the first two. I don't think.
Probably because you weren't in it.
No, just for other reasons, really.
Woman there and then the woman here. Go ahead. I'm sorry, is what? Is Shelley doing much acting these days?
Shelley?
I don't know who Shelley is. Your daughter, Shelley?
Shelley Duvall is doing
Shelley
a lot of work
Duvall.
these days, but she's not my daughter.
I was completely lost. I mean, it's true that she co-starred with Sissy Spacek.
I have Wayne Duvall, who's a second cousin who does some work, I know.
Sorry. Yes.
Thank you very much for your wonderful character acting. I actually, watching this film, I didn't feel like I was watching the film. I thought I was in the film.
I didn't feel watching this that I was watching the film, but that I was in the film. So thank you for the acting. And
Thank you.
You're welcome for your great performance. But I have a question related to what Annette said earlier. She started saying this was based upon a true story, and then you said there was fabrications. Can you tell us what aspects of the film were fabricated?
Can you tell us more about which aspects of Get Low were fabricated as opposed to this true story?
Well, I think pretty much the whole film was fictionalized, other than the basic premise of a man who wanted to hermit, who had led a hermetic life, and he wanted to talk. And I don't quite know what his secret was, but he wanted to see who would come to his funeral, so they could tell their stories about him. And that part of it was true, but most of it was fictionalized and brilliantly in the final analysis by Charlie Mitchell from Alabama.
Now, was there any relationship between the Felix Bush and the Bush family?
This Bush family?
Yeah.
I better be careful. I'm in New York here, but that's up to you to figure. I don't think so. I don't think so.
To the best of our knowledge, no.
I was asked that question in Spain. I said, "Don't talk too much in Spanish." So you had Franco, I said.
Gentleman on the aisle. as one of the early and outspoken conservatives in Hollywood, do you feel that you were ever ostracized in terms of getting parts because of your political views? Did I hear that right?
No,
Os-
I'm above that. You know, I can be what I want to be, and, you know, I mean, you know, I'm not hurting anybody with my opinions, and I don't think I've ever lost jobs because of any personal beliefs or, you know, anyway, I work.
Okay. Woman in the middle?
It's the
here?
money. It's hard to get the money. That's what's hard to get, the money.
Especially if you're doing low-budget independent
Yeah,
films,
it's
right?
hard.
Yes, a woman in the middle? Any chance of your coming back here to do live theater?
Listen, if the movie business suddenly dissolved, which it's not, I would, you know, I would consider doing theater work. But, you know, I don't like to do, I mean, I love doing theater, but I don't think so. I mean, you know, I don't want to do something 7, 8 times a week, you know. I mean, the great Italian actress, what was her name? The great
Anna Magnani?
No, greater than Anna Magnani. Before
Sophia
Anna,
Loren? No, before.
No,
I'm sorry.
no. Who is it? The great.
Eleonora Duse?
Wait, yeah.
Oh, I
Eleonora
keep going
Duse
further back.
wouldn't do 8 performances when she came to New York. She wouldn't, you know. She was a great actor. I mean,
Eleonora
the
Duse.
stage is great.
So
and
people
I
ask
love
me
the story about Eleonora Duse. They say, compared to Sarah Bernhardt, she came on stage, she hadn't seen her daughter in a long time, and she flushed red when she saw her daughter, as opposed to the third act when she bent over to pick up a handkerchief, her face got red. So she was, I guess, a great actress, but she didn't want to do 7, 8 shows a week. Not, you know, and I would, if I had to go back to the stage, I think I'd be fine, because it's all, you just have to speak up a little louder is all. Without this, you know, you have to, you know.
No, these days they mic you.
I'm
inside
ready,
your clothes.
but I do like to do film. You travel around the world, you meet nice people, different things, you know, and I feel, most of the parts I feel that I do on film, I could probably do on stage if there were a stage version of that.
And actually, I should remind everyone here, because I didn't mention it, that even before you became a major film actor, Wait Until Dark, he played the
Broadway,
sadistic
yeah.
villain on Broadway opposite Lee Remick. And that
Yeah.
was, from what I understand, pretty chilling. I didn't see it myself. And also a very famous American Buffalo, 1977.
American Buffalo, yeah,
that was
many
one of your
people
major-
thought that was the best, but Ulla Grosbart of New York City, I was with him today, he directed that. He did a beautiful job directing that with Kenny McMillan and John Savage. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Yeah.
You know, a rough play with language. I wouldn't even invite my parents. The language was so rough, you know.
Yes, you're right. That's David Mamet's way. Right. A question over there on the left.
Is there any character or historic figure that you would love to play that you have been thinking about for a long time?
Is there any character or historic figure that you would love to play and have been thinking about for a while?
Yeah, well, you know, I've been offered parts now that are just as good as ever, and Terry Gilliam had seen me do the little Cuban barber that I played with Richard Harris and remembered it, and he wants me to play Don Quixote in his next production in Europe, which is a great part. It's different from the one he tried to do 8 years ago.
Right,
It's a
about which
great-
there's a wonderful documentary, Lost in La Mancha.
on that. This one's different, about a shoemaker from a small town who becomes Don Quixote, and when the commercial they're shooting, the movie doesn't work out, he goes back to being a shoemaker. So it's a wonderful part, and
Wow.
give me a good horse, and I'll be ready. An 18, 19-year-old, almost foolproof horse who has all those moves, the Spanish moves, you know, and I'll be ready. But
No,
you know,
I could see you with a, you know,
Yeah.
I can see you doing
well,
that.
he did. He put together something on the internet how you could make somebody look like, and he showed me as Don Quixote, and the way he made it looked like maybe I could do it. You know, I would really delve into it and do my research. It'd be a great part to play. And then Billy Bob Thornton, who's so brilliant, and his writing partner have written a beautiful, wonderful, uniquely written screenplay about the Deep South. It's so interesting, and I keep saying it. He puts Tennessee Williams in the back seat. It's so brilliant, this script. But he's looking for the money too. He can't find it. So, anybody out here?
Well, potential producers in the audience, you never
Yeah.
know. I can't see the balcony. If there's anyone up there with a question, oh, now I see you. Just yell it out.
Nice theater.
I was wondering, in The Godfather, was Brando's idea to play the role
In The Godfather, was it Brando's idea to play the role the way he did, especially the accent, or was
I
it more
got a feeling it
Coppola?
was Brando's idea, because once he gets an idea, he goes with it. You know, he's very set. You know, me with the things in his cheeks and all. Yeah, I guess that was, you know, Brando's idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that opening scene with the cat was wonderful. To be that natural with the cat was really nice. You know.
Yeah. And my understanding is that when they did Apocalypse Now, Brando had lots of surprises for Coppola. I mean, he showed up on the set, you know, sort of 200 pounds more than he was going to be.
In his baby blue Mercedes, yeah, in the jungles of the Philippines, yeah.
Yeah. Slightly more Brando than Coppola. Not in the balcony. Are there any other questions down here? Yes, sorry.
How was your experience of working with Rod Serling's Twilight Zone episode, Doll's House?
Yeah.
How was your experience working with Rod Serling, Twilight Zone episode Doll's House?
That was great. That movie went into some kind of litigation. They didn't show it for years. But I was a young actor, and I went out to Hollywood in Culver City, and I stayed in the motel the whole time because I didn't know anything about. And I'd go around the block to the MGM to do the part. It was a wonderful part to be able to do, and I enjoyed doing it. Wally Grauman was the director, and Sidney Pollack's wife. What was his wife? Claire played in the miniature. She was, and we became in the miniature together. Rod Serling wasn't around really. he wasn't around, but that was a very special thing that I enjoyed doing very much.
Great. In the middle, yes? I'm sorry, a little louder? How did you get the part of Boo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird?
I was at the neighborhood playhouse, and we did a play called The Midnight Caller, where I played a drunk and a love-torn guy, and something clicked, and I really connected with the part. Every night it was very emotional. I'd come in crying for my lover, and she'd gone off to Houston. I was drunk. And one night, Horton Foote comes with his wife, Lillian, Kim Stanley, and the director, Mulligan, Bob Mulligan. And they liked what they saw. That, I guess what I did that in. Kim Stanley was in her heyday then. And about 2 years later, when they were casting the movie, they saw me in a TV play that I had done for Naked City. And that, along with what they saw at the neighborhood playhouse, Lillian Foote, Horton's wife, said, well, Horton, what about that young man we saw in The Midnight Caller, your play at the neighborhood playhouse? Might be very good for Boo Radley. So that's the way I got the part. I can really thank, well, Horton Foote's wife, really, for that.
Yes, right behind you, yes? Can you talk about working with George Lucas on the film THX 1138?
Yeah, it was like when we did The Rain People, he was about 105 pounds with a camera and a Niagara, and he did a documentary that was really a wonderful documentary on the Rain People, and we got to know him. And then when I got the part of THX, it was his first feature film. It was like he had done it 25 years in the right way. He was so deft and so skillful in what he did. He used 2 cameras. I'd never seen that before. And it was just, you felt you were in safe hands. It was wonderful to work with him. It really was.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, we're going to take the balcony and then down here, but, you know, my students are not yet as aware of it as we are, but the 1970s was probably the richest decade in the history of American cinema, and you had the opportunity to work with some of the key filmmakers who emerged, and you informed so much of their work. And, you know, you, together with De Niro and Pacino and some of these amazing actors, Gene Hackman, defined that entire period and made something that's a model for the filmmakers today, as far as I can tell.
I think this film could have fit into the 70s.
Absolutely.
I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do.
Balcony?
Thank you for coming to speak with us, first of all. My question
Thank you.
can you comment who your favorite actor and or director was to work with in past tense? And in terms of the future, who do you aspire to work with? You've worked with so many greats. Is there anyone you're looking to work with from an actor or a director?
Can you tell us who has been the greatest actor or director you've worked with in the past? And looking to the future, the actor or director with whom you would most like to
You mean
work?
actor, director, or actor and director?
An actor and or director.
Well, probably
Actor
working with
and/or
Brando, I
director.
would say, probably, you know, and Coppola, and Altman was great to work with, but there have been other ones that have been very good to work with, you know, and in the future, you never know. You plan, and then something will come from around the corner that's better than what you've been planning. So to work with Terry Gilliam would be great. And with Billy Bob Thornton, he's very talented. I would like to work with him, and there are others, but yet I don't know who they are, maybe. So I got my fingers crossed, you know. I mean.
And anyone in particular that shaped your career?
No, I think it's kind of a cumulative thing, you know. On stage, maybe Udo Grosbard helped me, and then Coppola, and then Horton Foote. Those two absolutely helped me with my career. As I said before, if it had been only for those two, it would have been a wonderful mini career.
Yeah. There was a question down here and then one on the aisle. You are an extraordinary actor. Do you have any idea of how good you are?
Well, if my wife thinks I'm okay, then I'm okay, you know. She's a very, I call her the head of the perception department in our family. She's from northern Argentina, very bright, extremely bright. Yeah.
Well, sometimes, I mean, I know that awards are a measure of one's validation, and sometimes reviews are you don't read reviews. But my guess is by now, after all the films you've made, you've developed what Ernest Hemingway called a built-in bullshit detector, and you probably know, when your work and the film is on a level, that is worthy of being shared with big audiences. Right. And sometimes the projects are maybe a little disappointing, but right. you probably give them the same amount of
sometimes
energy.
The editing, they leave things out that, you really... For instance, in Get Low, there's a saying that when I did research for the Catfields and the McCoys, they say that Devil Anson, who Eric Roth wrote for me, but I don't know if we'll ever get to do it, that he had mother wit. Not possessive mother's wit, but mother wit. It's in Cervantes, it's in Shakespeare. I used it in my final speech. They said, mother wit led me to that house. They cut it out. I said, why did you cut it out? He said, well, people won't understand it. It's self-explanatory, and even if they don't understand it, so what? So sometimes things that are cut out of a movie, it really doesn't, it's not always, the film Tomorrow that I like so much, I wouldn't see it for a year because of the things they cut out.
And is it true that in Apocalypse Now, there was something cut out of the napalm in the morning
And they put
scene?
it back in the second one.
Okay.
When I saved the baby and sent him in a helicopter back to be, in the medevac to be treated.
But that was cut from the initial
It was cut in the
release.
original one, yeah.
Okay. I think it's going to be the last question, woman on the aisle. This character seemed so haunting to me. Somebody who was a tragic soul who wanted love and through happenstance lost it. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said about the end. At the end, what this character wanted, was it actually love more than forgiveness?
Well, he had love in the abstract, but in the immediacy, in the picture of the woman. He wanted love, he wanted acceptance, but he did want forgiveness. Definitely wanted forgiveness, I think. Like when she said, how long has this love been going on for my sister? He says, it's still going on. Yeah. And that was added by Charlie Mitchell, that whole rewrite. But I think forgiveness, and also to know that maybe somebody understood him better now and could forgive him. I think, people do ask for forgiveness. Yeah.
And also, I mean, it's, for me, pretty complex, the whole notion of becoming your own jailer. Yeah. In other words, rather than going to an external source for forgiveness, validation, punishment, when you do it to yourself, when your own body becomes both the subject and the object, that's your character.
Some Englishman was interviewing me for the radio for this the other day. He said, well, now there's so many little small towns in America in the South where people are all prisoners. I said, what do you mean prisoners? Any more than your country? I said, people have weird conceptions of certain things. People, just because they live alone in small villages, they have their maybe a complete life, doesn't mean they're like prisoners within their own society, I don't know where this guy was coming from, this Englishman,
Well, I guess he wasn't used to solitude in any sense. Right. But I think, obviously, especially given the way people are responding, this film is simple on the surface, but actually has a lot of pretty violent emotional undercurrents that are going to stay with us afterwards. We are very grateful, not just that you made the film, but that you came here
Thank you.
to be with us tonight.
Well, thank you. You great
so much.
questions. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And good luck with it.
Thank you.